From National 9 News, this is Nightline with Mark Burrows.
Alleged Nazi war criminal Konrads Kalejs arrested amid extradition moves. New anger in wake of Sydney airport decision and dumping of fast rail project. And George Bush edges closer to the White House. Good evening. Alleged war criminal Konrads Kalejs has been arrested in Melbourne following a formal request for his extradition by the Latvian government. The new moves to finally bring 87-year-old Kalejs to trial have been welcomed by Jewish groups. Charles Slade has our report.
The Kalejs arrest came only hours after the Latvian government finally lodged formal extradition proceedings with the Australian ambassador in Riga. The 87-year-old was taken to the Melbourne Magistrates Court late this afternoon, where the federal government did not oppose his application for bail, but did apply strict conditions. He had to surrender all his passports, pledge not to apply for any travel documents, not approach any international points of departure from Australia, stay at his current place of residence, and notify authorities of any change of address.
Well, this is a very welcome development. All credit to the Latvian authorities, and of course the Australian government has been fully cooperative in the last year.
Kalejs only returned to Australia last January after he was extradited from England following his discovery at a nursing home in Leicestershire. It was the third time the Australian citizen had been deported from other countries, first from America in 1994, then from Canada in 1997. War crimes investigators allege that Kalejs was the leader of an infamous commando unit which ran a slave labour camp outside Riga, where they slaughtered tens of thousands of Jews and Gypsies, allegations Kalejs strongly denies. Konrads Kalejs is likely to appeal his extradition on the grounds that he's old and in ill health, but the Australian Jewish Council says age should be no barrier when prosecuting crimes against humanity.
The issue is a question of justice here, and not pursuing alleged war criminals, I think, leaves a precedent too horrible to contemplate. There have been successful prosecutions of older people in the last few years in many countries.
Charles Slade for Nightline.
The federal government might at last have made a decision over Sydney's airports, but the issue is far from over, with the latest proposals attracting a roar of criticism. The capacity of the international airport will be increased, while Bankstown Airport in the city's southwest is to cater for more traffic and larger planes. Today's announcement was met with cries of political tinkering, with claims that the problems will mostly affect Labor electorates.
There was disbelief in Bankstown today over plans to use the local airport to take the overflow from Mascot for interstate and regional flights, including jet aircraft.
737s is just an unbelievable shock to the people of this city.
And for opponents of a second airport at Badgerys Creek, the agony will be prolonged, with the government shelving plans, yet reserving the site for possible future use.
It leaves the residents of Western Sydney in a form of suspended animation.
The federal government has dismissed the criticism from many quarters, claiming Sydney International Airport, which coped so admirably during the Olympics, will handle an expected doubling of international passengers.
There's 10 years solid life left in this very, very valuable bit of infrastructure.
The minister is hoping the increased visitors will be handled through bigger aircraft, not more flights.
If, for example, Qantas put up a proposal for, one of these new 500-seat jobs, and that was competing with something smaller, they'd get a preference.
Critics of the government have no doubt this was a political decision. While you won't find many Liberal voters around Bankstown, the government stood to lose at least 2 Western seats by building an airport at Badgerys Creek.
It's not a political decision, it is a very logical thing to do.
The government is also facing a renewed fight in the noise-affected Inner West, where it's been accused of selling out to the airlines.
There will be a return to civil disobedience and there'll be airport blockades.
Another concern, smaller regional airlines will be shunted off to Bankstown. The government says not true, but the PR battle has just begun. Brad Schmidt reporting for Nightline.
Hard on the heels of the airport decision came the announcement that, after a decade of planning, the government was dumping plans for a very fast train service between Sydney and Canberra. The project held the promise of jobs and investment, but there were concerns it would not be viable.
They've been operating overseas with high degrees of success and safety for 30 years. Australian business has tried for the past decade to build a very fast service here. Today, that project and $25 million worth of planning investment was finally scuttled.
Such an exercise would not happen in this country without substantial taxpayer investment.
The $4 billion project needed about $1 billion in government money, an investment that business leaders claim would have quickly paid for itself.
Not just the construction jobs, it's the long-term jobs, the long-term investments, new communities spring up.
And the enormous boon to business and tourism travel between Sydney and Canberra.
Australia will be left, along with Antarctica, Africa and South America, as the only continents without a high-speed rail network, which isn't exactly the new economy we're trying to project to the world.
There remains just a chance that the dream of a very fast train for Australia hasn't reached the end of the track. The federal government's now talking about the possibility of a high-speed rail service linking Melbourne, Sydney and Brisbane along the coast.
There aren't so many people that want to go Canberra to Sydney as compared to, say, Melbourne to Sydney or Brisbane to Sydney.
Mr Costello says government would be able to find investment money if that link proves feasible. Peter Harvey for Nightline.
A coup for Australia's car manufacturing industry, with Holden deciding to build a major new plant in Melbourne. The decision will generate thousands of jobs and secure Victoria's car industry for decades. But it's a blow for those behind Adelaide's proposal.
Football, meat pies, kangaroos and Holden cars.
It was the moment a triumphant Steve Bracks has been working months to achieve. And the Premier was not about to miss a second of the rapturous reception from Holden workers at Fisherman's Bend.
You should add one of these.
Minutes earlier, in a more formal setting, Holden chief Peter Hannenberger confirmed Victoria had won the right to build the new generation V6 engines.
It is a triumph for Australia and Victoria, which now clearly is the centre of Holden's technological expertise.
While the announcement was a major defeat for South Australia, it was welcomed in Canberra.
And I think it's a vote of confidence in Australia. It's a vote of confidence in the future of this particular industry.
Neither the government nor Holden will say how much this deal has cost Victorian taxpayers, but both insist a reported $50 million incentive package was not the crucial issue.
The biggest incentive was the skills of the people, the logistics, the road, the rail transport, the deep water port.
A key element, the apparent goodwill of the union movement.
There's no reason to suspect that there's going to be anything on the horizon that's going to derail that.
The new plant will be operating by 2003, producing 214,000 engines a year and earning Holden more than $400 million in annual exports. David Broadbent for Nightline.